It is? Button pushing. There we go. All right. Oh, I'm just so delighted to be here with you all this morning. Andy and I had such a wonderful experience when we were here for Reverend David's installation, and we are honored to be a friend of Reverend David's. He was actually a staff minister at our church when he came out of ministerial training, so we have kind of a long history with him, and it's just such a delight to be serving here at his center. When I heard that your monthly theme was, "Behold, I make all things new," doesn't that just give you chills? I thought, how wonderful. I just love that statement. Behold, I make all things new. And it's such a wonderful promise that at any time in our lives, we can make a new choice and start new. It's like no matter what we're going through, no matter how dark the night was, no matter if we had a dark night of the soul, the next morning, the sun rises, and there's dawn. And it's beautiful. This morning there was a beautiful dawn at the house we were staying in. The sky was pink and it was incredibly beautiful. But every day, every moment, we get to start new, and it's so wonderful. And the topic for today is a new design for living. And I love that topic. I just want to remind you, Chris brought something up that I agree with in the reading from Ernest Holmes, is that we don't teach anything new here. You're not going to hear anything new from me this morning. You're just going to hear things that you already knew, maybe in a new way to remind you. And that's what this teaching is about. We're here to remind you of some things that sometimes we forget about. So, a new design for living. There is a book by Ernest Holmes of that title, and it's a wonderful book. This morning I decided to speak from my own experiences and my own truth about this rather than using Ernest Holmes's book to start new. So I thought, if I was going to design a life, which we do every day, right? We design a new life. If I was going to say consciously, if I'm going to consciously design my life, what do I want to put in it? How do I want it to look? Because sometimes we just kind of go with the flow rather than setting those intentions and thinking about what it is that we want. So I started thinking about that all week. And so the first thing I thought of was, I want to make bolder choices, right? I want to live full out. I want to make the bold choices, the choices that sometimes are not easy to make. Rather than going with the status quo. I knew that didn't sound right. I'm going to flow instead of going with the status quo and step out into my truth. Now, I read a quote, I don't remember who it's by now, but he said, one of the most difficult things I've ever done is follow the guidance I received in prayer. Because we ask for an answer, and sometimes Spirit says something that's surprising. So I want to be on fire with my intentions and visions this year and make those bold choices. Reverend Andy and I made a bold choice when we left the Center for Spiritual Living in Roseburg the end of October to branch out on our own. And we just had this inner calling that it was time to have more freedom and travel and move around. And it was scary to leave. It was, what? We're going to step out into something that we don't know what it looks like yet. And we did. So, and it's frightening, yet it's exhilarating. So I want to make those bold choices. Rumi said, stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. And at our workshop this afternoon, we're going to talk about some of these things, some of these passions that we have. That how do we take the passion that we have and use it in our life? How do we do that? And it's wonderful. I feel so fortunate to have Reverend Andy Anderson as my husband, and we do workshops together. And he plays music. We do exercises. It's very experiential. But after we make a point, he plays music, and it embodies it. Music is very powerful to embody the ideas. So I invite you to all be there at 12:30. It's going to be wonderful. So the next thing that I would add as designing a life is I would every day remember who I am. Remember who I am. Because if we truly believe that there's only one power in the universe, and this power is inexhaustible, infinite, perfect. It is the allness of freedom and love and beauty. This source, that the I am of the universe. And it made us out of itself. For what else did it have to make us out of? So therefore, we are part of that whole perfection. And how could Spirit is always creating out of itself. It doesn't struggle with creation. It just flows. That's what it does. It creates. And it creates through us. So if we are the emanations of the one, how can we be not good enough? How can we be limited if we're made from the inexhaustible perfection of the universe? We must be perfect. But that's not always the message we tell ourselves, is it? That's not always the way we feel. So I want to remember every day that I'm one. One of the ways I do this is in meditation, and also just to sit outside under a tree. We're staying at the beautiful home of Barbie and Brad, and it's up on a hill, and I went outside this morning, and it's so still, and the trees were so perfect and still. You could hear the birds and some turkeys in the distance, and I remembered who I was in that moment. Because so many times we search outside ourselves for the answer, don't we? If I just had the right husband or partner, if I just could get the right job, or if I just had the right house, or maybe this city isn't for me, maybe I have to move to another city, and then I'll be happy. You know that one, right? And in truth, and this is something that I know you already know, happiness comes from within. All truth comes from within. We already have it. When we get this mode of having to search and, I need this, then the universe is just searching with us. We never achieve that. But when we stand in our truth and know that we already have what we need, there's nothing more powerful than that. I'm going to tell you a wonderful story I like that I read about in a book by Gangaji. Do you know Gangaji? She's a spiritual teacher. I think she lives in Ashland, Oregon. And it's a story called A Diamond in Your Pocket. So there was a diamond thief, a jewel thief, who was very good at what he did. For many years, he honed his craft, and he was a pickpocket, and he knew exactly how to get jewels from people that had purchased them, and he hung around at the jewel mart, the diamond mart, and one day a merchant came in and bought the finest diamond that this jewel thief had been wanting for years. It was the consummate diamond. It was perfect in every way, clear and sparkling and beautiful. And this thief wanted it so badly, and he was excited. Today, I'll get this. So he followed the merchant through the diamond mart when he purchased the diamond, and he boarded the train with him for a 3-day journey. And he tried everything he knew to pick this man's pocket, and he couldn't find the jewel. And he was so surprised because he said, I'm always able to do this. What's up with this? So at the end of the 3-day journey, the merchant exited the train and he followed him, and he finally couldn't stand it any longer. He went up to him and he said, "Hi, I'm a jewel thief. And I have to know where you hid the diamond. I've been watching you and following you and trying to find it. Please tell me where you hid it, just so I know." And the merchant smiled a little smile and said, I know who you are. I saw you following me and I figured what you were up to. So I hid it in the one place you would never look. He reached forward and pulled it out of the thief's pocket. And there was the diamond. The diamond was the last place he would ever look for it, in his own pocket. And that's where our beauty and wisdom is. Sometimes the last place we look for it is within. We already have what we're looking for. The next thing I would add to my design of my perfect life is to remember how powerful my thoughts and words and intentions are. We all know that, in this teaching, change your thinking, change your life. We've all had experiences with how powerful it is, but I want to remember every day, because I'm continually amazed. Even though I've been in this teaching for years, I'm continually amazed at how powerful it is. So I'm going to tell you a little story that happened to me. Reverend Andy and I spoke last weekend in Salem, Salem, Oregon, and we had heard about in Portland, Reverend David Alexander had an event for Martin Luther King's Day, Martin in Music, that sounded so intriguing to me. So I said, okay, let's take our travel trailer and we'll go to a campground, and then Friday night we'll go to Lake Oswego and see this presentation, and then we'll go back, and then Sunday we'll go to Salem, and it'll be all good. So we did that. We got in the car, and we left a little late, so we're kind of in a hurry. And then I'm mapping it all, and I'm thinking, this is crazy. We're driving hours and hours and hours and hours, and we had to drive 3 hours round trip from the campsite to go. So I was kind of, getting negative about saying, this is crazy. Why did we do this? But our inner knowing really pulled us forth to do this. But I was saying, why did we do this? We're going to be late, and I tried to get a ticket online and I couldn't. So I was saying things like, we're going to be late, we're going to sit in the back row. If we ever get a ticket, we're not going to be able to see the guy. We drove all this way for all this. And then all of a sudden I went, what am I saying? What words am I speaking? What am I going to create with what I'm saying? So I stopped, and we did a spiritual mind treatment in the car, driving. Andy was driving. I did the treatment. And that we were going to get there at the perfect time. We were going to get there early. It was going to be easy and incredible. And Andy added to it, and we're going to sit in the front row. And I almost said, yeah, right. Because I didn't believe that we would, I knew that he did, so I just stopped and I didn't say that. I thought, well, who knows, we might be in the front row. So, because it was a large sanctuary, larger than this, and it was all sold out, almost. So, we got to the campground, dropped our trailer off, changed our clothes, got on the road, and got to the church early. And I had actually sent David Alexander a message, could he save us a ticket? And he said, yes, he would. So we arrived, and we came in, and we said, hi, there's a ticket being held for us. And the practitioner who was talking to us said, oh, you're Reverend Bonnie and Reverend Andy. We're so honored to have you here. I'm like, whoa, this is nice. They know us. We'd never been there before. And then we said, well, we came to get we have a ticket. So he said, here's your ticket. And so we went up, and I'll show you that. This is the ticket we got. And it said, Section A, Row A, Seat 5 and 6. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like it might be, doesn't sound like it's in the back. Row A is not usually in the back. So we took our ticket and walked up to the very front row. And they told us that the mayor had been a contributor to this event, and he called at the last minute and he said he couldn't make it. So they decided to give us the mayor's tickets. So that's how it works. When you change your mind and change what you're thinking, the results change. If I had kept saying all the way there that we'd be in the back row and wouldn't be able to see, guess where we were? We had some friends that go to that church, and I said, "Can you save us a seat?" And she said, "I don't think so. They're all reserved, but I'll try." And then she texted me, did you get a seat? And I said, "Yeah, we're in the front row in the mayor's seat." So it was such a wonderful reminder from Spirit of how it works. And let me tell you that we were so glad we went to this event because it was amazing. Charles Hall was the musician. Charles Holt was a musician. I don't know if you know him. And then another man was speaking. It was a two-man show. One man was speaking as Martin Luther King. And you could close your eyes and you thought it was Martin Luther King at that podium. And he recited whole sermons of Kings without a note. And he was so passionate about it that after one reading he did, he burst into tears. And then they would have music. Charles Holt would sing a song a cappella. Every song was a cappella, and it was so sweet and perfect and amazing. And they talked about how important music was to the civil rights movement. But we got an opportunity to see two people living their passion. They said that when they decided to do this, they got together and planned this event, and by the time they were through, they'd made some calls and had booked three of them, and now they have people calling them. They said that this is why we are here, to do this work. And it was moving and just an incredible experience. So we were so glad that we followed our intuition and made this long drive because it was so worth it. And sometimes we have to give God something to do. Ernest Holmes talks in the textbook about how it's like an iron foundry. When you melt the iron and it gets poured into molds, the iron doesn't care what mold you pour it into. It can pour it into the mold of a thimble or an anvil or something huge. It's unformed substance. Excuse me. And that's how Spirit works. We have to give it something to do. We have to give it the mold, whether it's perfect health, prosperity, relationship, love, whatever it is that we want, we have to give, we speak forth, because Spirit always says yes, doesn't it? It always says yes. So if I say to Spirit, Spirit, I want to make a living doing something I love. Spirit says, yes, Bonnie, you want to make a living doing something you love. And then if the next sentence I say is, but everybody knows that you can't make a living doing what you love, then Spirit very sweetly says, yes, Bonnie, you can't make a living doing what you love. Everyone knows that. So it's always saying yes. So we have to give it something to do. Instead of worrying about what we don't want to happen, we have to see ourselves, know that we already have it within inside ourselves, and see ourselves living the life of our dreams. Another thing that I would add to this mix is this design is saying yes and having fun. Because sometimes I can be kind of serious about studying this teaching and everything. But sometimes you just need to have some good belly laughs and have some joy, have some fun. We live on the river and you can swim there in the summer, and I love to just go and jump in the river in the summer, and it feels so good. And that's one of the ways that I have fun, is just by leaping in instead of going in, tiptoeing in. But Rumi says, when you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. When you do things from your soul. When Andy and I decided to move to Roseburg, we lived in Fremont, California, and served at the Center for Spiritual Living in Fremont, and we decided to take the church in Roseburg and move to Roseburg, Oregon. It was a big move for us, and we were buying a house. We were selling our little one-bathroom house that we'd raised our boys in and buying a home in Oregon. And so we took a yellow pad of paper and sat down at this beautiful little lake that's in Fremont and said, okay, if we could have any kind of a house we wanted, what would we have? And we just played with it, and we said, Andy said, I want to be on the water so I can walk outside my front door and take my fishing pole and catch a fish right in my yard. And we said we wanted it to be open and the outside in. We wanted it to be peaceful. What we wanted was a sanctuary that we could go out and do our busy life and come back and just go, ah. And then we let it go. We didn't say we're going to write down what we think we can afford. We didn't say I'm going to write down what I think we deserve. We just had fun with it and took all the limits off and wrote this list. And guess what? We gave Spirit something to do. We ended up with that very home. We live on the North Umpqua River. Andy can walk down to the river, and he fishes there, but he doesn't always catch anything, but the river's there and he can fish. And we have big picture windows. The outside is in. And the most important thing is it's so peaceful and quiet. It is truly our sanctuary. We come back home and we just go, we're so glad to be home. No matter what wonderful place we are when we come home, we're always so glad to be back in the peace. So when you give Spirit something to do, don't put caveats on it. Just let it be open and see what magic you can create. And the last thing I would put in this design is that when I forget to ask for help. Sometimes we don't ask for help when we need it. Everyone forgets. I have a practitioner, I have a mentor, wonderful people that I call when I need help, when I'm struggling. I call them, and after I speak with them, I remember all of these things. I come to center and I remember, that's right. And my mentor will more likely ask me, Bonnie, are you doing your meditation every day? Because when I don't do that, then I get off center and I forget. So to me, that's very important. But please ask for help if you're struggling. You don't have to be alone. And at this center, you are so lucky because you have Reverend Sue and Reverend Mary and all the other ministers and practitioners. You have a large staff of people and Reverend David that you can call and get help. And you'll maybe sing your song of woe to them, and they won't believe you. They'll smile, but they won't believe your story. They'll see the truth of you and remind you of who you are. So whatever it takes, don't be afraid to ask for help. It does not mean that you're weak or that you can't do it on your own. We all need help sometimes. Everyone needs help sometimes. So Ernest Holmes said this: the Spirit is neither sad nor depressed. If you would catch the vision of the joy which should be yours, you must dry your tears. You must lay aside your fears. You must think from the inspirational center within you, which is nothing less than the divine in you singing its song of life. So let the divine in you sing its song of life. That's what it's waiting and ready to do, is to sing its song through you. That's how it creates in this world. Celebrate your greatness. Say yes and give God something good to do. Thank you for having me here this morning. It's been a privilege.